that's an interesting topic, is how you locate one team versus another. I mean, move management is hard. I've talked to people who do this as their full-time job, and it is just something that is such an interesting problem, because you're trying to place people where they're going to be most productive, and you don't necessarily know, does sales need to be next to marketing, or does sales actually need to be next to product, or does the entire sales floor need to be its own, right, in order to be talking on the phone because everyone feels uncomfortable? Like, there's so many human problems that can come with working in a space.
Hello and welcome to video interview series here at Open Source Workplace. If you haven't been here before, my name is Todd. I'm the founder of Open Source Workplace. I just ask you to subscribe if you haven't already, and this way you'll be notified of all upcoming videos that we release. Today, I'm super excited to have a good friend, Nick Austin, here from Comfy. Nick, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Steve. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you. I appreciate you giving us your time, and I'm looking forward to digging into your knowledge and wisdom you can share with the open source workplace. Nick, obviously you studied environmental policy at college, and now you're working at Comfy. How do you go from one coming into a workplace application like Comfy? How does that journey happen?
Well, I mean, you study at UC Berkeley in the Bay Area. You're surrounded by technology, and it tends to be that everlasting answer to every problem, until you realize it isn't. There's a lot of things that people end up doing. But what I can say is, from environmental economics, what I was really interested in solving was, how do we make it to where big impact areas in our world can have return on investment that's clearly articulated to people that have the money to fix problems. And so, when I went into my career, it was very much, what are those big places in the world that we can make impact? And buildings which take 40% of the world's carbon to really be produced and operate, became that mission. So now that I'm at Comfy, which is a workplace application and technology that layers into buildings to make them more efficient, to operate based on how people actually want them to as occupants, is just a way where I can put all of these different things together that I think are so interesting in terms of building efficiency, the way that people are actually going to buy and make a vision happen that will make the world a better place. So that's my soapbox.
So you're relatively intentional, and that's really interesting. I've never heard anyone articulate their desire to get into the workplace space and smart building space because of those intentions. A lot of people who I interact with have kind of fallen into the workplace and got involved in it and fell in love with it. But you've been really intentional.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I mean, it comes from, having worked with a lot of architects and engineers and how they design space, and hearing that the biggest problems are not from, how smart can we make this building, because the technology is there. It's, how do we actually make the building operate to how people need them to in that space. That was the thing that I heard over and over again. Once we invest in this smart technology, like, no one ends up using it, and so that's the goal here.
Yeah, no, it's a really important thing. So, I mean, you touched on smart buildings. How would you define a smart building?
Yeah, so what I can say is that there's a huge range. When I think of a smart building, it's one that is giving control to an end user, and giving them choice, just like you would when you are in your own home. And so if you go into a smart building, you should be able to have that frictionless experience of tapping in and finding the space that you need to do your best work in order to relax. All of those different things throughout an experience of a day is how you're going to have like a smart building react to that user. And so that can take a lot of forms. You can have, you know, HVAC that responds to you, lighting that responds to you. But more importantly, just how do I get from point A to point B when I'm going throughout my day, and not have it be this thing where I have to ask a facility manager every time I do it.
Yeah, and what feature of a smart building, given just what you've just outlined, do you think is the most common used and gives the better rate of return?
Well, rate of return for an enterprise business is, I think, the biggest things that we're seeing in the market right now is around space utilization. I mean, you have typically 50% of the office not being used, even though it's been built out for whether it be a meeting room or the desk space that's given out to employees. And so it's as simple as, how do I get the employees to have the right amount of space? And that does often take an understanding of, like, are there sensors in the space that are getting real-time occupancy of when users are there? And then once you have the sensor, how do you have something that shows people where to go in maybe a flexible environment, which is becoming so much more pervasive in the industry? And you see almost every new space kind of being built out in this way because the problem is there.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
No, it absolutely does. And I didn't want to interrupt your answer because I wanted to hear where you're going to take us. But what
Yeah.
I sort of, and I probably could have phrased my question a little bit better, in the sense that when you're talking about all the different applications and uses of a smart building, so being able to know where to go to be your most productive and so on and so forth, right? In what you've experienced and what you've seen, is there specific elements or applications that people are actually utilizing that actually give them the most rate of return? That's sort of the thing I was really after. So in other words, if someone was going to make an investment, where should they spend their money first?
I really think that it is, at least what we're seeing, it is on that way for people to find the space, which is like literally being able to book a desk, book a room whenever you need it, or find the phone booth that is open, and not have to, you know, do the interaction of walking up to the phone booth and checking whether one person is there or not, right? Peeking in. And it really does make a difference for the end user, but also it's about that person that's making all these decisions, like the space planner, the workplace experience lead, you know, the person that has your type of job.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
That ends up making those decisions. They need the data behind how people are using the space. And so all the clicks, all the hardware, all of that being factored into one place.
Got it. And is there a size of office? So, you know, obviously, you know, you manage a portfolio. I can see where a large office, where this is, you know, it's that you have it, you enhance the whole experience for everybody there. But actually, for smaller offices, the cost to actually implement, is it necessary? And I know a lot of people sort of have this sort of question they ask themselves, and anyone who manages a portfolio doesn't want to be, well, you know, only the good locations, the big locations get something, and the smaller locations don't. But then some things don't make practical sense. Is there a size, or, you know, a threshold of people, size of square footage you seen where this should be applied, or where it's really not necessary? What's your take rather?
So I heard this phrased in a good way. What you're talking about is the have and have nots. I like the have and have alsos. That's the way I've heard it phrased. That actually makes sense to me, because I don't think that people should build to the lowest common denominator when they're making decisions, like design decisions for the portfolio. Because I mean, definitely when it comes to a small space, there's going to be less smart technology as the hardware of the building. But there's still a lot of things that you can provide that make that experience one, especially through digital means, that can make it to where that person has a better interaction with the space. Yeah. When an employee walks into a small office, and it's their first day, right? Or you're a remote employee, you walk in and you can't find the coffee machine, the bathroom, and you don't want to go ask the office manager, and the office manager doesn't want you to ask them 100 times where all these things are, right? That's when you walk up to the printer, does the printer have a link on it that shows you how it works, right? These are very basic things that everyone goes through, that can be used in a smaller building. But saying that, you're totally right in that bigger buildings, Fortune 500 enterprises, these are the companies that are probably going to first adopt a lot of the smartest technology. But there's opportunity everywhere.
Yeah, yeah. And why do you think companies should care? I mean, when I say companies care, is obviously they're obviously trying to provide their experience, but whenever they're thinking of the value proposition, right, from a smart building and smart technologies, why should they really be thinking about these things?
At a base level, if you think of the most innovative and successful companies of today, what do they all have in common? It's that they are that they have innovative and agile employees, right? People that can make decisions fast, that they aren't sitting there disempowered. They have all the tools at their fingertips, and then those people go out and do amazing things. If you're an organization that wants to make a space that is better than someone's home, where everyone comes in and people collaborate, that takes an amazing space to do it, and it has to be better than that home experience. Otherwise, people just aren't going to come in anymore, right? That collaboration and the choice and control that person needs in order to do their job well is just going to multiply when they have a bunch of people that are around them doing the same thing, where they're bumping into each other in the kitchen because it was designed that way, right? Where they can say, I want to have a meeting right now and I know exactly the place to do it. Where everyone feels comfortable in the office. Like those are things where once you have an environment that makes employees their best, you're going to be a successful business, or at least much more likely to do so. So I like to think of it as that top line benefit, not just like the hard costs of running a building, because it is a cost center for
sure, absolutely, and that's why sometimes it's so hard to get the investment needed to sort of implement some of the projects and things that you're mentioning, right? But again, so I guess, is it possible to use technology, or is it the right use of technology? So whenever you have that environment, you just, what you outlined there was, okay, where do I need to go to find or do the right thing, or where's the best place environment to do this type of work or that type of work I want to do? How do you use technology to assess or evaluate how those spaces are actually being used by the occupants? Because obviously you've made the investment to build and create an environment. So how do you then monitor and ensure that it is optimized for the employees who are located there?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's the hard quantitative feedback that you can get with actual IoT sensors and working with the BMS and the lighting controls. I mean, all of these things that are the guts of the building, in order to get information of where people actually are. And if you can have a way of saying this space is used 0 to 20% of the time, and this space is used 100% of the time, but it's meant for the same purpose, then how have we built this one so correctly and this one so wrong? And once you can start being as a planner or as someone that's managing the space, start looking at these issues, then the problems are going to be isolated that are actually coming up for the end users. And so that's sort of quantitative how you can look at it, but with the qualitative then feedback that you get from employees, where they're isolating, like, this is my preference in this particular space. And you can start understanding, how many hot and cold call tickets are made from this space versus this one, how many lighting tickets are made from this one to this one. Like, then you can really understand what's different. I mean, I've known studies to happen where you put in new chairs, new furniture into different types of spaces and different types of furniture, and you see which ones are actually providing or just giving a space that's more used, and then you can replicate what's actually working.
Yeah. No, I love that approach, and obviously it's the biggest challenge is knowing what's the right thing initially, and I think you have to go to the employees. That qualitative is really, really vital, and sometimes it's the right environment, it's just in the wrong location in the space you have, proximity to the teams that actually need that type of space, and so on and so forth.
Right.
Key things,
That's an interesting topic, is how you locate one team versus another. I mean, move management is hard. I've talked to people who do this as their full-time job, and it is just something that is such an interesting problem, because you're trying to place people where they're going to be most productive, and you don't necessarily know, does sales need to be next to marketing, or does sales actually need to be next to product, or does the entire sales floor need to be its own, right, in order to be talking on the phone because everyone feels uncomfortable? Like, there's so many human problems that can come with working in a space. But also, like, maybe you need a certain amount of those connections to happen in order for businesses to thrive, and being able to see where that starts to match up. There's an interesting thing that we did a hackathon not too long ago, and one of the projects was to analyze our own meeting room data, and meeting data as a whole. So how much are certain people interacting with other people on the team? And you started to see these natural hubs forming where, let's say a product manager, they talk to nearly everyone in the organization at some point. And so, but then you start seeing where certain connections, there was like a mental map where you could see all these different places and people going around. And it was really cool because we could see that there were certain areas where that person should definitely be talking to other people, or that team should be meeting with this one. And that's where I'm really excited to see how we can affect, end business.
I was just sitting here listening to you enthralled, because I wanted to see where you were going to go and how much you were going to show us and tell us, but I'm fascinated with this, I 100% believe that the placement of people, intentionally or unintentional, and understanding and sort of observing that dynamic and the proximity and the movement and the connectedness, all the rest of it, and sort of, is there a way you then can track that back to output, product delivery, sales processes, all the rest? How do you connect those? So sorry, you're gonna say that.
Yeah, well, I was at Future Offices San Francisco not too long ago, and one interesting presentation to me was about BMO, it was the Bank of Montreal, and they had recently changed, really added in smart technology, made the space in a more agile way, and it was different than they'd done the rest of the portfolio, and it was kind of like a trial. And this was in a space where they, people would actually take clients in order to have meetings. And they saw in that next 6-month period after doing, releasing this new building, from those portfolio managers, a 15% increase in their referral rate of clients.
Wow.
That's big money.
Oh yeah. That is ridiculous. That's crazy.
I thought that one was sick.
No question. The challenge I want to make sure I ask this the right way. Did they use technology to determine proximity and where people should be seated? or did they use some other metric, human interface, management guidance, or something else in how they deployed their employees? Do you know?
I don't remember.
That's
I
fine.
think,
Don't worry. I'm
yeah,
just really curious. I'm really curious.
it's something to follow up with them about,
No.
because
I
I'm sure they
definitely.
have a good case study for it.
Yeah, yeah.
If I remember, I mean, they definitely were doing a fair bit of monitoring of how space was used, um, and I think that's kind of what I definitely remember.
No, not a problem. And one other question asked on that. Do you know if they were doing assigned seating or whether they were doing activity-based working or made it any change
It
in
was a
that?
mix.
It was a mix, yeah.
Yeah, it was a mix, which was new for the org.
Yeah,
I think they were pushing some of the space to be flexible seating, but I remember that you definitely still had executives in their assigned spaces. Maybe I think it was a move away from large offices.
got it.
Pretty typical, but like trend based stuff.
And obviously what you see obviously with Comfy and the clients that you bring on board, you must see a lot of the transitions and sort of changing in assigned seating, unassigned seating, activity-based working, and so on and so forth. What trends have you seen recently?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that we're excited about is there's a lot of different ways that organizations can go about actually delivering this new type of space. And there are very human problems that come up when you don't necessarily know where people are going to be when they're sitting down during the day. So if you don't have your own desk, like assigned the 2.4.1, that's the name or whatever, are there neighborhoods are where sales is in one space but they could sit in any part of that neighborhood, or is it a completely like a free-for-all for the office? And in either sense, you need to start understanding where people are going during the day and facilitate how they get there. And with that, you also need to make sure that they can find their coworkers, because it's pretty frustrating when you go into a space and VP of product Stefan is not where I know him to be, right? Or where I know his desk is, so I can at least leave a note, even with all the digital technology that exists in our days. So being able to find him right away, that's a huge thing that we're solving for right now. I think also understanding, yeah, how people use that space, and then delivering that to the executives that eventually understand whether this is successful or not. Because so many businesses, like the people themselves that are deploying something like this, they know it's right. They just need to figure out how to make it right for their organization and how to do the change management that is necessary for people to accept it, for managers to accept it, and for people to know how to actually operate in this new way.
Hmm. And have you seen trends in types of industries that are sort of going to this and trending towards activity-based working?
I mean, I yes and no. I think everyone, all sorts of different industries are going towards this type of model. I think I've seen financial orgs, technology. I mean, these are pharmaceuticals. These types of industries are moving, I think, first from what we've seen. But I mean, traditional companies that have been around for 150, 200 years are moving to these models,
Yeah,
and even at a portfolio level.
yeah, no, I totally agree, and that's certainly what I've seen when I talk to my peers. And those organizations that aren't prepared to quite make that 100% leap, or even to start doing or introducing activity-based working, actually what they're doing is they're signing all their seats and then creating all this other space to operate from, right? So to provide people with breakout space and different rooms and meeting room styles and so on and so forth, so that they still have everyone still has a seat when they come into the office, but they have alternative places to go and do their work or tasks.
Right. Which, I mean, at a certain point, you just have to weigh, as an organization, like the cost that you're willing to put in per employee, um, and like how much money do you have to spend on these cool spaces. One thing that I saw from Microsoft Dublin, they had a really great project out there. You're from Ireland, as I know,
From
right?
Belfast. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. So they took all this information that they had about their space, and they made it to where they had a lot more of those alternative amenities and cafes, and it's by far the most used space, for employees to meet, an increase of collaboration. I mean, all of these things really came into fruition through that project.
Yeah.
And I think that's just, one example.
Yeah, no, I think it's an easy way to start changing the culture to that. So then employees become almost subconsciously not activity-based working without even really thinking about it, So it's an interesting approach. And I think
It's got to be easy.
It has to be,
You
right?
got to make it easy for people. Yeah.
Yeah. And at Comfort, are you assigned are you activity-based work, and how you guys do it?
Well, we have space to grow into. That's the truth at our office. We're hiring. So if you know anybody that
I love
wants
it.
to come work at a very high growth technology company in Oakland, California,
There you go.
then please let us know.
The only thing is, though, right? Anytime I see you advertising, you dance. So you got to do a dance at the end for me to play this. That's the only.
I think that's how that was like how we met. That was that was a fun video.
That was too funny. But yeah,
was...
no, sorry. I interrupted you. So you have space to grow, and basically therefore you have that.
Well,
go on.
What I can say is we're absolutely ready to go to an agile setup, and we even have teams that have said we're opting in, right? And I think that's important as anyone makes these decisions. Is you take the engineers that are at their desk all day, you don't want to mess with them, right? You take the salespeople that are at their desk for 2 hours, and give them a place to work when they need it, and let them free for the rest, right? Yeah. And so I'll be one of those go-to-market folks that probably doesn't have a desk, which I'm totally okay with.
Yeah. No. I mean, and I work from home a couple of days. When I go to the office, I have an assigned seat. I don't need it, but it's just how we do things. So that's just how it rolls. Right. So I'm totally with you. And I think most people who know they're more mobile and are quite happy with that sort of approach.
But that's even a cultural change to say, if you're in the office, it's the old mentality of, getting in at 7 a.m., being the first one there. Oh, that guy's working. It's like, no, not necessarily. I mean, you could be at home doing the right work at the right time.
Yeah.
And that's something that really has to come from high up in the organization on how people are going to get work done.
I love that sentence you just used, doing the right work at the right time. I love that, actually. It's really cool. I haven't heard that before. So no, thanks. Maybe I'll put that as the heading of the actual video, but yeah, so one question I like to ask everybody, and you can give this from a personal perspective of what you think organizations should be doing, but what sort of advice and guidance would you give for an organization or yourself that wanted to maximize productivity and employee experience?
You gotta listen to your employees, right? If they are coming in and they have certain repeating problems that they're facing in their day, those are your opportunities. If you can go in and both see what they have as their issues, but also factor in how you, as someone that actually makes decisions about this place, that everyone comes into every day, how do I make this more efficient, but also just that better experience? You really have to start from listening, and that might come in a couple different forms, where it's people are afraid of Big Brother. That's something that I'll put out there too. So don't be afraid of technology. That's my number two, because that is also a change management piece, right? Where people are coming into this space and maybe there's a sensor in a place that they didn't see beforehand. But that is the organization listening to better the employee's space. Just the same as taking, survey feedback would be. And that's the other thing is survey feedback shouldn't be once a year. It should be continuous.
Yeah.
And that's how you're going to drive an amazing place for people to come into and do their best work when they need to do it.
Yeah, no, I love that approach. I totally agree with you. It needs to be a continuous, and employees do have that big brother fear, and it's as a sort of a workplace lead, you kind of want to put people at ease that the only reason we're asking you is because we actually want to help, right? And the whole purpose of what we do is to be of service to the organization. And that's what we want to do. And sort of whenever employees know and feel you're getting it right, then you have the Uber effect, right? So you let Uber do whatever, because wherever you get off that plane, you're going to have an Uber right outside waiting for you, And whenever they feel that they're getting that response, then I think that big brother effect kind of does disappear a little bit. But what I'm finding, I've been thinking about this sort of question. I always post it to people, and what goes in the back of my head is it the employer's problem to fix the workplace productivity or employee experience, right? Because I do have that question, and that's not my question to you. My question to you is, what do you do, or what sort of things do you do to ensure you are your most productive?
I have an amazing way that I set up my email. No, I'm kidding. I make sure that I get the right exercise. I mean, wellness is a huge part of a personal practice. Between that and giving yourself the space to have a break. We're coming up on the holiday break. That's super important too, just as hard as coming in and grinding and doing all the work that needs to be done. So that's my tidbit.
No. Thank you. And I know I sprung that on you last minute there, so I appreciate you going forward and giving me a response. So thank you.
Yeah.
But before we go, is there anything else you want to touch on that we may have skipped over, or you were not a chance to mention?
I mean, I'd have questions for you, Steve. Is just what is your tip for me to come in and be my most productive, for even as a provider of technology like this, and as someone that really cares about the industry as a whole, and how you convince people to do new and difficult but productive things. It's something that I'm really always interested to hear how I can be better, and how my organization can be better at responding to things like that.
Yeah, and it's something struggle's the wrong word, but it's something that's front of mind for me all the time. At this moment in time, this time of year, you mentioned the break, right? Giving yourself the break. Doing open source workplace, working, at NASDAQ, which is a full-time gig and quite an intense gig, as you can imagine. I don't get a lot of breaks. I work, most weeks, 7 days a week. And I have to allow myself to give myself that break. But, on a daily basis, I don't exercise as much as I would like to. But what I have to do, and what I do and ensure I do, is I put content in my head first thing in the morning. I give myself an opportunity to sort of relax, digest, and sort of think through my day. And those are sort of things that I try to do. So what are my priorities, and do my priorities before I almost even get to the office, so that basically I take control of my day. And that's sort of where I try to win as it is. But at this moment in time, it's like, I can't wait for a break.
I'm excited. I'm going to go see my two little nieces in LA. They're
nice.
Annika and Evie. They're 4 and 1, and they are hilarious.
Great. No, sounds good. Look, Nick, I really appreciate you giving us your time today. Obviously, anyone who has worked with Nick, interacted with Nick, please click on the link, give him a rating in Open Source Workplace. That helps promote his profile in Open Source Workplace. But Nick, look, thank you. I really appreciate you giving us your time today and sharing your knowledge.
Of course. Thank you for having me, Steve. And everybody, add me on LinkedIn. I'm totally open to that, and reach out, and I'm happy to have more conversations like this.
Perfect. Thank you, man. Cheers.
All right. Cheers.